The Duke's Infant and Child Foundation, advocating for children's brighter future.
Much. We appreciate you. Thank you. So how many of you have saved that number on WhatsApp? Let me see your hand. We need to get feedback, direct feedback. And the reason we're asking you to reach out to us on social media is because we need to get back to you. You heard the convener say something about getting back to you. Somebody said, how are you going to get our slides? These are the means in which we can get back to you. All right, so save the number and get ready to interact with us on the go. So the next speaker, okay, I have another one here. The president of Artisans Development and Networking Organization, Edo State chapter, Comrade Engineer Ogiagbe. Thank you so much for being here. There's so many of them. We'll take all of them as we progress with the event. Multimedia, the next speaker.
Esohen Idehen is a dedicated children's education activist, life coach, and social innovator with a profound commitment to international development and human capacity building. As the founder of the educational project Beyond the Classroom, she works extensively with schools to provide holistic education that addresses the emotional and psychological well-being of students alongside academic excellence. A certified practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming and cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), Esohe specializes in identity change and mind re-engineering. She is the visionary behind the Fulfilled Woman Network, a mentorship platform for young women, and the Benin Renaissance, an annual conference focused on youth capacity building and mind reset. Through her various academics and coaching programs, she empowers individuals to achieve self-discovery and mastery. At the Trade Summit, Esohe brings her deep expertise in behavioral systems, design, and social innovation to help educators nurture a generation that is not only academically sound, but emotionally resilient and purpose-driven. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Esohen Idehen.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing? I'm sure it's been an exciting time so far, yeah? Yes? So, my name is Esohen Idehen. I am a full-bred Benin girl. Edo Pataki. So I did my ground, Abby. So, I'm so excited for this event because rarely do we have events that focus on just the child. And not just the child in terms of academics, which is what we get to do a whole lot. Because for us as parents, we measure the intelligence of our child only by their performance academically. So I remember when I was growing up, they'll give us our results then, and then I'll go home. Sometimes I was always between first and third. So the day I would get first, my father would carry my result and check. You got 90, 80, all A's. He will now ask me, where's the remaining 20? Where's the remaining 10? Who you give? The person, do you understand? So most times that's all we are concerned about when it comes to raising children. So having a program like this that is not necessarily focused on the academic part of a child, but also looking out for their emotional and psychological well-being is something we should applaud. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together again for the convener of the event. So yes, by the time we were playing the profile just now, I was wondering if I was the one or it was someone else. This topic, confronting and stopping the cycle of abuse and trauma, breaking the silence, healing the wound, securing the next generation, is beyond the topic for me. It's something that's very personal that I can relate to. Sometime in 20, I think between 2018 and 2016, 2018, 2019, I was doing a program for school tag Beyond the Classroom, where everything we're focused on was basically on the psychological and emotional well-being of the children. We got a bit of resistance from schools at that time, but the few schools that allowed us. During the sessions, we had some shocking revelations. We had issues where some of the people I went with, my team of coaches, who are also trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, there was a particular school we went to at Upper Sokomba. They all broke down. They couldn't even take counseling. In that school was the first school they told. So usually I'll do it for secondary school. I'll have that conversation for secondary school. And I think one or two schools insisted that we do it for their primary school. But this school insisted that we do it for their KG, kindergarten. I wasn't prepared for that. So when I got there, I had to look in and realize that, oh, those of them who were child experts in the team needed to start. Ladies and gentlemen, to shock you what we unveiled. In that school, all the children in KG down to primary 1 have all been abused. Yes. It was really heartbreaking for us. If I mention the area, you say Nassau, but that was Upper Sakomba. And no, so I don't want us to begin to do the area. We had the same revelation, we had the same thing when we had with some schools here just around GRA. I'll tell you a particular story that was so personal to me for a young girl in one of the private schools, but as I go into my topic, I'll talk about that. Why did I have to bring up? In fact, one of the children in that class, primary 1, was being abused by a brother who is in primary 3. So he was abusing her sexually and abusing her younger sister. Now, this gives us an idea of the kind of children you deal with in your classroom every day that you are not aware of. That sometimes you as child handlers, so I'm going to be talking to everybody in this hall as child handlers. So whether parents, children, counselors, we all handle children. And for us, we intend that these children are what? The next generation. Somebody said while I came in that the next generation is not tomorrow. They're already sitting with you in your sitting room. But let's take it a step further. They are with you in your classrooms every day. They are with you in your churches, in your children's session every day. The question is, what do you really know about them? And how are you able to create an environment that ensures that they grow all together as an wholesome person? Not just one child who comes home the best in athletics, the best in school, like go represent Edo State somewhere. That's my child. But little do you realize that that child that you are healing is broken. And that if nothing is done about it, that's one child, the danger to the society. It is that serious. That's the children we want to raise every day, or the children we want to see, or the generation that we intend to see, that we envisage, is already right with us, but highly broken. So every time we want to get a functional society, the question I've always asked is very simple. Where do we and how can we get a functional society when over 50% of the generation or the numbers of that society are dysfunctional? How can that happen? It can't happen. Am I correct? It cannot happen. So confronting and stopping the cycle of abuse, it's important that we realize that first, there is abuse happening. Because, like it or not, it will shock you to know that some parents still don't assume that it's happening. One of those girls told me, I tell my mother, every time she's not at home, that our next door neighbor always punches me. My mother beats me and says I'm sports. That's the reality that these children are faced with every day. Yes, we are quick to judgment. In the classroom, this one does not pay attention. This one not spoiled. You get all sorts of things. But the question is, beyond all of that, how do we stop this abuse? Is it something we think we can do? Can we do it? Are you sure? And yes, that's why you're here. So that you can learn to stop that cycle of abuse and trauma. But before we go ahead, I really want to ask us, what is abuse? Yes, we all know. Right? We all understand what abuse is. We understand the forms of abuse. We know that abuse can be both physical, can be verbal, can be what? Emotional. And all of them eventually will affect what? The person psychologically. And if a person is dysfunctional psychologically, they cannot do anything because the mind of a person is equal to the engine of a vehicle for a car. Now, yes, we all understand what abuse is, but the next thing is, what is trauma? What is trauma? We tend to say it a lot of time, right? Trauma. What exactly is trauma? How does trauma manifest? How does it show? How do I even know as a child handler that a child I'm dealing with is traumatized? What do I look out for? Now, psychologically, medically, I am always not one giving to an exact definition. I just like you and understand the concepts. When we talk about trauma, some say that it is a series of what? Events that the mind cannot process. Do we understand? So it's a series of events that has happened that the mind cannot process, that is trapped in the body and in turn affects the ability of that individual. And that's what trauma is. Many times than not, we tend to assume that trauma is always in the mind. Suffice it to let you know that trauma can be trapped in the body. And many times than not, it is usually trapped in the body. We may not have all the time to go into all the nitty-gritty of how all of this work because of the limited time we had here. Now that we've been able to understand what trauma is, the next question is, are we willing to confront it? Because confronting means that now you need to look inside and you need to stand up and say something. There's usually a cliche where they'll always say, please can we move to the next slide? There's usually a cliche where they'll always say, don't just look, right? See something, say something, right? See something, say something. So when it comes to confronting something, it takes a lot of strength to be able to confront an issue. Because this is not one of those times where you just see it. It means that you're willing to challenge this thing. Are we together? Sometimes in challenging, the trauma, so I'll stay more with challenging the trauma or the abuse. You find that it awakens something in you, which now shows you that even you, there's something you're dealing with that you sometimes don't even want to admit. Do we follow? It's already a crisis. I mean, it's in your community. We've talked about this, and all of this cycles of abuse, neglect, emotional wound, unresolved trauma. All of these things are what we want to look at, because all of these things are what our kids are going through. Why is it very important that you understand all of this? It is because as the child is growing, whoever is on the slide, just listen to me and just know it will move to the next slide, please. So, as the child grows, you will get to understand that trauma at the childhood stage, at a tender stage, is very, very devastating to the child, to the individual. Right? It's very, very, devastating. Because it is at that phase where the brain of the child is still forming. So the different parts of the brain that interprets emotions, right? Store emotion, responsible for, a whole development of the child is affected. And this then does what? Affects everything about that child. Their academics, their relationship, how they deal with people. Sometimes you're very quick to say they are so stubborn. Gen Alpha, Gen Z, even the old millennials have been we're just quick to say they're very stubborn, but they are dealing with something. They're dealing with wounds. Majority of them, let me not categorize, are dealing with wounds that we cannot see. And many times, the attitudes they show you is their cry for help that you do not realize. So even when they show you things that is a cry for help, you kill it, thereby perpetuating the trauma, thereby constantly and continuously wounding them. Of course, what is unaddressed becomes what's repeated, and what is normalized becomes what inherited. I want to look at how we expose these hidden circles. I've been talking about that actually. Some of the things that they go through and all of that. But one of the things that has made this really strong in our community is the culture of what? Silence. The culture of silence. I told you about the mother that will beat her child and say she's false. And I asked, in fact, most of those children that I eventually had a conversation with, the majority of them, over half of them told me, I told my mother, but my father is not aware. So I'm sorry if it feels like I'm going to be going a bit. Yes, I'm talking to everybody, male and female, but I'm sorry if it feels like at a point I'm going to be so hard on my own gender. Because when it comes to nurturing a child, there is a relationship between the child and the mother. A very strong relationship, except something went wrong. If nothing ever goes wrong, the relationship between a child and a mother is one that you cannot joke with. So you will see, even as an adult, even as old as I am, I want to say something to my son, I'll go tell mommy. Let mommy go tell her first. Then you can't call me. Do you understand? That does not mean that children don't have relationship with their father, so that the males does not think, hey, no. The girl child, if you want to now zoom in on the abuse, has a special relationship with her father. That if her father does not rise up to do anything, abuse continues for the girl child. We don't have all the time to reach down to all of this. Right? Of course, we've looked at all of this psychological. The next slide. So, the culture of silence is not only that of
where's the one you're talking about?
To let
Is it
the
the same?
person know, right? It's not only that of not wanting to say anything. No, it is also that of you not wanting to confront the devils you are dealing with. So it is not just only silence about the child that is being abused. It is also silence on your own part to your own self, because you would rather not touch that room, you would rather not stir that troubled water. Are we together? And then why do we have to deal with silence a whole lot of times? Reputation. Family secrets. A child tells the mother, your husband, my father, is touching me anyhow. He says, shut up, let anybody know here. An abomination. It cannot be said in our family that such a thing happened. The culture of silence. The question is, like I always say, the most times, children will always be vulnerable with their mothers. Of course, that's if you create the enabling environment. So it's not just enough to say, because I be mama, it will always come. No, it doesn't happen that way. It's an intentional work. It takes a level of intentionality on your part as the parent to be able to create that room. I told you earlier that trauma is stored in the body, right? Before it begins to affect the mind. Now, some people get traumatized, it's stored in their body, and then it leads to mental illness, mental health conditions. And most of the common ones you will know, it's PTSD, right? A lot that would always have talked about. But do you also know that there are some persons who have been traumatic, who are going through trauma, but then it does not lead to mental illness? But you will see it in some kind of ways. You will see it even in physical illness, it will show. So some of the times you're complaining about chronic pain, headache, and nothing is happening. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, it is a pointer to trauma that has not been attended to. Sometimes, like I said, series of events that the mind does not want to do what? Process. So that's why most times you find out that in the therapy room, whilst there are different CBT tools, cognitive behavioral tools, that you can use when you're dealing with people in therapy, but one that always breaks it is when you're now having to do exposure therapy. That means you are taking the victim. I don't like to refer to them as victim. There's surely those of them who have opened up and are seeking for healing. I like to see them as survivors. I like to see them as victims. When you now take this person right into that trouble, that situation that you don't want to confront, the therapist takes you right into it. And that's usually one of the most vulnerable times for a therapist, because at that point you cannot tell the reaction of your patients. They could strangle you if you don't have help at that point in time. Of course, poor academic performance, drugs, prostitutions. All of these are ways that they tend to come up with that serve as what? Coping mechanism for them. You may now begin to wonder, so let me pinch down a bit to your students, your children, and even for those who probably don't have children yet, or you want to be a part of those that want to stop this circle. When we're talking about circle, we're talking about something that's repeated, right? That's just happening and happening continuously, a pattern that eventually becomes a circle. There's such a thing called a vicious circle. But I just want to quickly also let you know that trauma can be inherited. Yes. How? Trauma can be inherited. And I had to quickly say this because I am soon going to get into the place where you want to stop it. And then for some of us that will now say, are never born, I need to quickly let you know But then how does it affect the academic performance of a child? When the child is growing up, the brain has different aspects, and each of these parts of the brain has their own function. I'm going to zoom in on 3 of these aspects. We have the amygdala, we have the hippocampus, and then we have the prefrontal cortex, or cortex of the brain. Each of these parts of the brain have their function, have their role. Those days we used to believe that the brain, right? That once a person gets to a particular age, the brain is fully developed and there's nothing you can do about it. But further research has showed that such a thing called neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can unlearn, relearn, and create new pathways, regardless of the age of the individual. However, it is a lot easier for a child to be able to create new pathways, which is why we usually say in family systems practitioning that it is more easier to raise a functional child than to repair a broken adult. And we usually would always say that the problem of the world is an adult. The solution is a child. Which means that at every time we require that you are able to ensure that your childhood is preserved and the childhood of those around you is preserved. Do we understand? Remind me, just in case I forget, how is it inherited, right? Of course, broken and strained relationship. Let me also let you know that this thing called trauma that we're looking at is the reason why a child with the eyes open will pick a partner that you can see is not the right person for her, but she would rather stay there. See, its effect is ripple. It's the reason why you have to do something about it, because it literally affects the society. It literally affects the generation. Even their choice of how they parent is from this trauma that was not healed. How they pick a partner, it is this trauma. The behaviors you see, their money habits, everything you can think about, it's tied somehow to this unhealed trauma that you have not looked at. Are we together? So how do we break it? How do we stop it? The next slide, please. Of course. The next slide. Can we read that together? The top one. 1, 2, 3, let's go. It means that even whether you're teaching them spirituality, whether you're teaching them academics, there has to be a space for emotional safety. You need to ensure that there is a space for emotional safety, right? Because we're not just looking for leaders now, we're looking forward to raising transformational leaders. And for us to be able to raise transformational leaders, we want to ensure that their hearts are with us, right? So you're wondering why you have people who don't have empathy. I don't know if you've ever observed, but it's now a big deal. Somebody is in a dire situation, he needs help. Content creator is doing content on top. This is not to throw jabs, but when I say content creator, not just those who are the computer, I'm talking about the fact that we are more eager to video, to go and show somebody, to tell somebody than to save the situation. And you're asking, where is our humanity? This is where it has gone to. Because we have adults who are traumatized. And as a result, because those wounds were not cured, they have developed a level of coping mechanism that sometimes even makes them inhumane. So they don't have human feelings. They are not wicked. They are just people who have found a way to cope because they cried and nobody answered. The next slide. This is where I actually want us to go. I talked about the fact that for you to be able to do what confront a thing, you must be able to realize that you want to put up a fight for it, which means that it is not going to be a walk in the park. No, it will not. Now, apart from the generation, what they call the next generation, Alpha, what the next generation now? When I think Alpha, I don't know, but I think it's X now or something, I don't know. To be able to save these people, then those of us who are already ahead must first of all make a decision. Take note of that word, make a decision. Are we together? Confront your own unresolved experiences and trauma. I told you earlier when I was talking about silence, that sometimes it's not only silence about the child that is currently being traumatized. It is also silence on your own part because you just choose to say, you know what, this part, I don't look at. Throw in the key. May nobody come there. So even in our parenting, we hear people say, now so that they raised us and we turned out well. Question, did you really turn out well? Are you really well? No, you are not. Because if you show every time as you talk to those children, sometimes you're shouting unnecessarily. In fact, you're backing, you're yelling. The child does something, it reminds you. You just think that you're responding to that child's action, but no. It is that the action of that child is awakening something in you that you have told yourself a long time ago. I don't want to touch. May nobody talk about them. Sometimes they tell us, pretend it did not happen. Brothers and sisters, it happened. I'm sorry, it happened. You need to process it. You need to accept that it happened. That's why I said it begins with a decision for you. Most of our teachers in the classroom, some of our parents, the majority of them, have their own devils and demons that they are battling, that they have refused to get help for. Let me quickly say here. Yes, we always say that hurt people hurt others, right? Right? That's the circle. The person who is hurt gets to hurt other people. But can I let you know that the fact that you were abused does not mean you have to become an abuser. It's a decision you have to make. Because some people were abused, and that's the reason they put up fights like this. I've met people, I've met ladies, especially even guys, in my practice, who when they share certain things, you feel like, is this really happening? Is somebody really going through this? I don't want to talk about abuse for the male child because somehow we don't even want to face it, that it's happening to them. Why? Because when they are abused sexually now, as it were, there are really no bruises per se, as it is for a female child. So how do we know when a male child comes to you and says, I was raped by 6 women? What do you have to show for it? Nothing. But if it's a girl child, we can go to the hospital, right? Check the vagina, check that there was a penetration, check that there was deposit of semen, and there are a lot of things that we can use. But for the male child, nobody. In fact, they don't say, because even there are people who tell them, shut up, you don't enjoy it. You know the man. Then you're wondering why we have young men who are beasts today. We're doing a lot of programs saving the girl child. Nobody is doing anything. So much for the male child. Who the girl child that you have finished saving is eventually going to end up with. You're not doing anything. You are wondering why the husband of a man decides that, okay, when it comes to sex, I will tie your hands, tie your leg. That's the only way we can have this sex. Brokenness that was not dealt with. That's not. I needed to talk about this long enough. And this is where I also want to talk about the hereditary aspects of trauma. Because beyond the fact that a traumatized person makes it out on their children, who eventually thinks that that's the best way of life, and eventually responds to you that way, responds to situations that way, those of us that are not married, if we still don't do anything about it, you know the gene, yeah? Genetics. There's something called epigenetics. You want to read about it after now. While the DNA itself, right, cannot be changed, the gene the gene of a person that is going through trauma, that has been through trauma long enough and has done nothing about it, what happens? The gene changes. Do you understand? So if we had a gene that's XXX, we see that the gene changes. There's a name for it, that process. And then it takes another path. Maybe an X gene becomes straight. What then happens? This thing is in you because your gene has changed. The child you are giving birth to inherits that trauma that is coming from you, even though the child probably was not exposed to any form of abuse. Now you see why you have to make a decision to fight those devils. You have to deal with those demons, because it's only when you are whole that you can make another person whole. Are we together? Of course, we've talked about the fact that you need to challenge harmful, long-standing traditions. It has never been heard of in our family that a brother and a sister, but it has happened. It don't happen. It has never been heard of in this family. The reputation of this our family, that we say that they get, the question is, what do you want? What is important to you? The child, saving your child, or your reputation? The reputation that will eventually still get damaged, because the damaged child you need to choose healing over denial. I've talked so much about the fact that it is a room that some of us have locked. They say, I beg, I don't want to remember. 3 years ago, a pastor's wife sent me a message in my DM. And the content of that message, she told me that I don't know who to talk to. I can't talk to anybody else. Because I'm a pastor's wife in the church, people look up to me, but how do I tell them that this devil is what I'm dealing with? Madam, how did this happen? She was abused a long time ago, but never said anything to anybody. See, that thing that you are closing, that wound that you don't want to open up, it will eventually open up. It will eventually open. And if you really want to be a savior, one of the strengths you want to do is that you want to tell yourself, if it happens to me, I'm not going to allow it to happen to someone else. The next slide. I am not going to let it happen to someone else. These are just the baseline, some of the things that trauma gets to, their daily behavior. Somebody talked about the fact that you need to be present for your children, but somebody else takes that place in their life. And in case you don't know, AI is doing so right now. You didn't hear? AI, artificial intelligence, is already taking your place as a parent. It's already usurping your authority as a parent. Because the hippocampus and then the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that interprets fear, right? As the child is growing, because nobody came to their rescue, that part, as a result of abuse or holding trauma, becomes unnecessarily hypersensitive. That means that the child will react to other things in a way that even you will still won't be tangent. Like, no, that's not make you feel like that. It's responding to something. The amygdala becomes smaller than it's supposed to be, which therefore means that it can no longer do what? Coordinate with other aspects of the brain to function optimally like it was supposed to be. It means that learning cannot happen. It means that that child will not be strong with problem solving. It means that that child will not be good or strong with decision making. It's the reason why we have adults who cannot make decisions. They will tell this one, they will tell that one, they will tell that one. They will. At the end of the day, in fact, the next slide. Do we understand? Are we seeing the reason why we need to do something? Your first responsibility as a parent, I didn't say as a wife, I didn't say as a husband, hear my choice of word though. As a parent, is to do what? Protect and nurture your child. It's priority. Yes, we can play between that role of wife, husband, dad, and my wife. But that's why I said your role as a parent. Because when we want to think about the role as a wife, it's a different ballgame entirely. That's when you begin to say, my husband cannot, we cannot go and tell, we cannot report, your husband rapes a young girl. Oh, of course, we saw the story of Chanya, what's that young girl? Now, you must build a system that ensures that there is emotional safety. Whether in the classroom, whether at home, there must be a system that allows for emotional safety, right? That prioritizes protection of your child over what? Positional reputation. The next slide. What do you do? When a child walks up to you and say, oh, this is what is happening, what do you do? Protect, you support, and you do what? Advocating is what the founder of this program, Mrs. Augusta, is doing at the moment. And having different stakeholders in this room so that we can understand what we are having to deal with. I know you feel like, oh, I wish we can just save all of them, but the truth is that you cannot save all. But you can do your best to ensure that it stops there and healing begins to happen. When a child comes to you and reports a case, that's not the time to say, wait till you go find for them. A girl comes and says she was raped, you're asking her, wait till she wear. How does waiting she wear empowers another person who is sane to rape her? How does waiting she go find for them empowers another person who is sane to rape her? How? A culture that we need to begin to deal with. And then we hide it under the fact that the man was made that way. His sexual activity. And the woman is what? Non-active, I mean. Men are polygamous in nature. In our culture, we can marry how many? Okay, if you want to marry somebody, will you not do it well? You want to engage yourself in sexual whatever, won't you do it well? Won't you ask for consent? I mean, there are girls who are willing to go that road with you. So you can even see that it's a problem. The fact that somebody just feels that the only way I can go through is to force. It already tells you to that even that young man needs help. I mentioned to somebody, I think 2-3 years ago, when I was in a meeting we're looking at something around child protection and all of that in Edo State, we did previous governments. And I said to them, I said, yes, it's okay to punish according to the law, 7 years, whatever punishment you want to give. But when you're done, you release that same child, that same man back into the society. What he needs is help, not just punishment. Are we together? Now, it may sound tough, but when you make that decision to begin to heal, it begins with a decision. Yes, you have acknowledged that it has happened, which is something you don't want to do, you want to deny. Yes, you have passed that stage where you have to acknowledge that it happens. It is a painful one, it is a process that you don't want to go through. It's why you need therapists. Because when you talk about therapy, all people here is the mad people. People who don't crazy. No. You are losing yourself. You need a therapist. They walk you through that process, but then the decision to be born is entirely yours to make. It's entirely yours to make. Nobody can force that decision on you. I've seen different cases of how people respond to abuse. I dealt with a young girl 2 years ago who was abused by a man who was supposed to be her father. Do you know what that girl started doing when she grew up? She would have sex with married men, record the video, send it to their wife. And of course, we would always see destructive tendencies because something has been altered already. So it's a case of, since I tell whoever was the mother then, and she said nothing, more you they destroyed the marriages they go. Because a broken child, anybody, I always say that when a person is offended, when you offend the person, are you the one to decide what will appease the person? Who decides what will appease them? The offended. Can we move on to the next slide? I've talked about the fact that you need to build emotionally safe space. When people can come up to you, a non-judgmental zone. Because in reality, if you want to influence a person, you must accept them the way they are first. It is only a person that has been accepted that feels at home. That's why the Beninese will always say, "Eke no my daily." The next slide. The future we desire will not happen what? Accidentally. It's what? A fulfilled confidence and emotional healthy generation must be built what? Intentionally. That construction begins with what? A firm commitment, confronting exactly what is broken and refusing to do what? Pass it on. Ladies and gentlemen, I think at this point, we've been able to pass the message through. Thank you.
Please, Benin City, clap for your own. Wow. Have you? Wow. Thank you. Esohe. Wow. Wow. Exactly. Thank you so very much. That was beautiful, right? I can see that you are both getting fed in your mind and in your stomach. Am I correct? Your stomach, right? Okay, I know time is of the essence and we are conscious of it. We only have 2 more speakers to go. Yeah. And we'll bring up the next speaker ASAP. It's going to be back to back. And you should listen to this too. All right? We have CSP Temi still waiting to unleash. But we'll bring on Coach TJ right now.
The Duke's Infant and Child Foundation, advocating for children's brighter future.